I actually think Apple would crush it making a sleep apnea machine. Like a super high design, because everyone's using that shit
machine?
now.
Yeah.
A CPAP.
What's the real size of that market?
Huge and growing. Everyone uses these things now, and they're ridiculous.
What? I'm going to market size this right now. Hold on.
I actually think if Apple had any balls, they would release a sleep apnea device. What is it called? A CPAP with AI on board.
Well, you need the AI. Hi, friends. Welcome to another week of More or Less. Oh, before I ask you what's cooking, Morans, we have a mystery to solve.
A mystery?
Oh, yeah. I love mysteries.
So, I don't know if the people can see, but a package arrived for us in Jackson Hole.
Oh.
And
I know where this is going.
Let's see here. It is a I don't know where the picture is. It is a beautiful photograph of some beautiful mountains and a beautiful VW bug and no card.
Camper.
Oh, camper. Sorry. Yes, sorry. And
There's no card? Oh, I wonder who it could have been from.
I wonder where that came from.
And we racked our brain and we thought of you guys. Are you the mystery gifters?
We are. You guys are really good problem solvers. You should be like a reporter or investigative journalist or something, Jess.
You know, it did actually take me longer to surmise this than I'd like to. But thank you guys. It's gorgeous.
You got it.
We thought that you'd enjoy it. And I think we should shout out a sponsor that's not a sponsor, but we should pitch to be a sponsor, which is framebridge.com. So it makes framing so simple. And I wanted to frame that for you and send it to you. So
love
there
it.
You go.
We're so excited. And then this morning, the beautiful pillows arrived, Britt, which did have a card. So thank you. The boys are very excited.
The Morin household sends good gifts.
And by the way, the mill is up and running.
Does it look like this? Just to make sure this is what it looks like?
Yes.
All right, good.
Love it. Love it. Oh, it's the one you took.
Anyone wants to buy a print, shoot me an email.
I have a Dave Morin original on our wall, Sam.
You're the only one.
Do you want him to sign it?
Oh, God.
Yeah, absolutely. It's more valuable that way.
Great. We'll make that happen.
There's the Grand, and Sam will be climbing it shortly.
Yeah. Please come down safely, Sam.
Yeah, of course. We're just checking out what's up there.
All right, cool.
Take my Meta Ray-Bans up there.
Yeah,
just to close the loop, guys, we're sold on the mill. Thank you. Our tomatoes will soon have fresh dirt.
Hold on. Explain the mill for people that are just tuning in.
Oh, yeah. So once on this episode, I complained that I said, I'm surprised the Morins don't have a mill. And then, of course, they did. But the mill is a garbage can-like device.
And we're investors, just to be clear.
That's important.
Yes.
Which is for your food waste to compost and basically composts overnight, your extra food waste, and turns it into soil for your garden. So
yeah,
that's what it does.
It's amazing. It's a little robot for your kitchen.
It does it really well. Sam, do you have any thoughts about the mill?
I mean, it was a little hard to unbox. It's heavy.
It is heavy.
It's done 27 pounds of dirt, of food waste saved from the landfill. I don't really understand that because, doesn't it just decay in the landfill? But it's good, the dirt. And my understanding is these things cost $1,000, right?
Right now, but we're in early production. The cost will come down. Yeah.
I like having dirt worth more than gold at my house.
But imagine the enterprise opportunities. Restaurants that have to dump so much food at the end of the day, and now they can turn that into soil and send them to farms. And
it would have totally changed the plot line of the Seinfeld episode with muffin tops.
Ooh, good deep cut.
Oh my God. Wait, Jess, I'm realizing we haven't introduced ourselves yet.
Do we still do that?
You guys told me that I'm not supposed to introduce people.
Yeah. No, we don't need to.
I like to call out the name of the pod so people, because they might be confused. They might think they're listening to Joe Rogan, folks. So you're not. It's More or Less with Britt, Dave, Sam, and Jess. And guys, we are in it. This is busy. We actually have a packed agenda. First, I think we're going to go through just some of the happenings. We've been talking about all these happenings lot of happenings, a lot of good insight from the happenings. And then it's been a big week in sort of creator economy news and analysis from our very own Sam Lessin. So we're going to dig into that. And it also ties with a big story from The Information this week about Stripe. So first, Sam and I went to the Chase Center last night to hear Mark Zuckerberg.
To hear a podcast?
To hear a podcast. You guys may have seen my joke. We get there and Sam looks at me and he goes, "Do you want to do your joke, Sam, or would you like me to say it?"
You can do my joke.
Sam looks at me and he goes, "Am I going to have to listen to a podcast at 1x speed?"
What's your normal speed, Sam?
Not 1x.
Are you a 2xer?
Guys, he's not a podcast listener.
No, I don't actually listen to podcasts. But if I were to listen to them, the idea of listening to a podcast at 1x is like all these guys who are like raw dogging flights, where they just like stare into oblivion for 6 hours. It's like unbelievable. It's so slow. It's like, why would you do that to yourself? So I was very annoyed to have to listen at 1x. But I have to say that with Mark did an amazing job. So the stuff before Mark was sufficiently boring that I just put on earbuds and listened to the presidential debate, which was more interesting.
Wasn't it Daniel Ek?
Look, Daniel's a great guy, but it was just like sinfully boring. But then Mark did a fabulous job and like really was I laughed and I was like, I need to do more with my life than be an internet troll. This is very inspiring.
Oh, what did he say that was inspiring?
Our listeners might be excited by this.
No.
By Sam not being an internet troll? Yeah.
The thing is, I'm very good at it and I get paid a lot of money to be an internet troll. So it's really tempting.
But short term or long term, Sam,
It's turned out both.
Okay, but get into your reaction. I have like a 3-point reaction. I actually thought
Why don't you do your 3-point reaction? I don't have a 3-point reaction. Okay. I just have a spirit about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, and Jessica, the journalist, has heard a lot of Mark interviews over the years. And this was actually one of my favorites. And so if acquired, they'll incorporate the podcast somehow, but I highly recommend it because I think it was Mark in his most natural that I've seen him. It felt like the most like how he is when he's just himself, which is also who he is as a CEO. And I think that really came through. He came on stage wearing a t-shirt that he's designed and talked about that.
What does it mean?
It means
learning through suffering.
Learning through suffering. Which is also very Mark.
Also very Jensen Huang.
Yes. I'm going to say things I liked about it and then the one question I have following it. So I thought just really solid, like pure founder inspo in it. And look, that stuff is interesting and important. And I love hearing CEOs talk about what these moments were really like inside the company that like the whole world is kind of looking at. And often the reality of experiencing them is quite different. Now, I think the reality of hindsight for Mark is also probably different than it was in that moment. And like he, like all great CEOs, are really good at a little bit of like finding the narrative after the fact. But, he talked about how some of the hardest moments at a company are actually when things are working and you don't know what to do next. But when things are actually really broken, well, it's really hard. There's like a clarity of what the strategy needs to be. And he was using examples like building a mobile app and all these other things that are sort of well known. So I really enjoyed like the stories he told and the perspective that really, I think, pulls back the curtain and just shows a side that isn't often seen. I've seen enough CEOs do interviews and been on the other side of the table. They all come in with an agenda. They all come in with the points they want to make, even if there are many of them. And I think it was so telling that he chose to end on the fate of the technology world, hanging on the difference between open and closed platforms and Meta and Apple being the primary competitors in the decades ahead. And he articulated it, I think, from the point of view that many models can work, but clearly also talking about, he believes deeply in a different view than the Apple view. And it was interesting to me that it felt to me like he decided consciously to beat that drum many times at the end. And in my mind, he was talking to like all the engineers and people and talent and partners who he feels like he has to, constantly recruit to like this vision. So
I don't know. I mean, I think that's one take. I think the other take is, again, I think what you said earlier is right, which is we've had the privilege of spending a lot of time with him one-on-one and in friendly settings for a very long time. And this is the thing I've seen him do in public that is most the same of the exact conversations in private.
Of course, it's totally genuine. I didn't mean to say that it wasn't, or that it was putting on an act, but like, rightly or wrongly, I felt like a switch flipped towards the end of the interview when they said, time's almost up, and he landed, I think, very effectively and genuinely this point. And I'll just finish them and then over to you. But like, I also think this is actually really exciting. If he's right, I think technology over the next, decade or so is going to be like really interesting.
If he's right about what?
Well, that this becomes, I mean, obviously closed and open ecosystems are intention, but if we start to see real balanced competition in all these new computing platforms, whether it's AR and VR and AI and so forth, I mean, they're just so early that you could still see one model running away with it or not, right? But if Marx was saying he anticipates this being, the real competitive threat.
Was he not including Google in any of this?
He didn't include Google. No.
Google's just falling apart. It's dead to him.
Well, I think both sides think they're kind of frenemies with Google, but they know they're enemies with each other, and that's probably why. The last thing, though, it's interesting. He talked very candidly, and this follows a conversation we had about his comments about wishing Meta hadn't responded to government intervention and around COVID and other things in content moderation as much. And he talked at length about what he took on is kind of his miscalculation around some of the political issues, and that around the time over the past 5 or so years, he said, well, Meta's made a bunch of mistakes. He felt they sort of apologized for too much when it came to politics. And, he said several times, I'm not apologizing anymore. And also painted that cycle for Meta, that scrutiny around politics, as being this very long phase, maybe 20 years, that has another 10 or so to run. And, that's a question mark for me. I think it's like totally unclear how the relationships between companies of $2, $3, $4 trillion scale, global billions of users are going, what that relationship with the government is going to look like. And I think he, for the first time that fully, I heard him articulate that he thinks it's a phase, and a difficult phase, and one he's learned a lot from, but one that they'll get through. And I think that's one of the really interesting things, we talk about a lot here too, the relationships between these next generation of businesses that are only getting stronger in governments. And I'm not quite sure that it will be sort of tidied up as a phase of them having gotten through. So, but I enjoyed it very much.
Sam?
I mean, to me, first, it made me a very happy shareholder, which I think is always nice. Look, I'd sum it up by saying it was like, what's the line from Friday Night Lights? Like,
clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
That's what that was. It was clear eyes, full heart, can't lose, right?
Guys, I'm rewatching Friday Night Lights and I'm pretty happy about it, but that's a different topic.
And like, I just think it's like, this is, Mark is awesome. He's a great human. He's just like, he's in it as a competitor for the love of the game. And he loves the game and he loves what he's doing. And it just came through in a really authentic way. And I think, I don't know, I think it was just a joy to watch. And it made me really excited about a lot of things. And I like this open close narrative is not new. I mean, this is the narrative of technology and it always has been. And I love that Mark has his claims around it. And I think they're very authentic and he really believes them and in a positive way. And just maybe, I don't know, I like left it being like, I'm so happy for him to be in the place he's in. And I just like have an immense amount of respect for him as just like a competitor who does it with joy. I think like Elon is a complicated character, but he just seems angry, right? In a lot of ways. And like, I just, I think that interview for me, the thing that really came through is just a lot of joy and excitement about the future and what can be built and a lot of great perspective. So I don't know. I really actually truly enjoyed it. And I think it'll age very well, which I think is a great thing to have kind of put out there.
I appreciate all those thoughts. And I'm kind of bummed I wasn't there, but I'll listen to the podcast on 2X.
Yeah. I mean, there's no podcast in the world that shouldn't be listened to at 2X.
Yeah. So I wanted to rotate our perspective for a second to something completely different about this, which I'm very interested in, which is we talked about this event happening a few episodes ago, and we were making predictions about how full the Chase Center would be. And I think it's interesting that the Chase Center was not even remotely full. Like we had 6,000 people or so that showed up. That's a place that can hold, 30, 40,000. And the boxes were largely empty.
Because who wants to listen to a podcast at 1x? It's a stupid thing to do.
I just think it's interesting, right? We were trying to figure out how many people will show up to this type of thing at the Chase Center. What kind of an event will this be?
6,000's a lot. I mean, I hear your
point. But it's small for the Chase Center.
Wrong venue choice. But that was a partnership. That was a sponsorship. They had to host it there.
I am not knocking it. It's still a lot of people. I was interested in the scale of the IRL podcast coming into the real life, right? Totally independent of the actual interview. I'm interested in the context around creators going IRL.
For what it's worth, I think that it wasn't a very good live event. I had a lot of people who were like, "Oh, are you in town? Are you going to the Chase Center?" I think a lot of people showed up as because they thought they'd meet people there, right? Or run into people. And so I heard of people coming in. I heard secondhand of someone coming I'm going to be there because I think there'll be VCs there. There was it kind of almost felt like an old school New York Tech meetup on steroids that way, right? In terms of why people were there. But I would actually argue that I don't think that the podcast live thing is a good format. I think Mark's content was awesome. Again, I think it's a great thing to have committed. But to your point, Dave, I mean, I'm looking at the, it's kind of hilarious. It's Mark's looking at his Instagram profile. It's his last photo had 660,000 likes on it or something. Or the internet's so big that anything you do IRL is just going to be an irrelevantly small number of people, right?
Can I flip this? Because we were talking about how, the Meta Apple open closed content line. And ironically, Dave was at Apple on Monday listening to Tim Cook. And so, Dave, were you equally as inspired by the content of the Apple keynote?
Well, that was a very different context. It was a launch event, right? So it's completely different. It's here's what we're launching.
The only thing I saw from that was someone, to your point about the live event could have been a podcast / was I saw some thread being the Apple event could have been an email.
Totally. or maybe a tweet.
I actually think that's a big question with the Apple events about the iPhone in particular. Apple generally launches the MacBook on email, to your point, Sam. They launch new MacBooks, I don't know, now a couple times a year. They're generally incremental upgrades. The technology does get better, but they don't make a huge amount of fanfare about it. And the September events at Apple typically are about big new releases. And this was definitely an evolutionary next release for the iPhone, next release for the AirPods, next release for the AirPods Pro and the AirPods Max, next release for the Apple Watch. And there wasn't anything new that was really launched. And so beyond that, that might be a reasonable take, actually, that the marketing might actually be better served to, look at it as just a core line of business that's getting updated and doesn't need the fanfare of a big launch event. It's a reasonable question.
Do you think Steve would have been okay with this back in his... I feel like every Apple event was a fanfare event, back in the day. And now they are becoming more just evolutionary rather than revolutionary. But
I don't think you can expect that from product lines that are used by 1 billion people and are on their 16th iteration, right? There are a bunch of people who have important businesses built on this thing. I spent a bunch of time with Matt Fisher from the App Store, who's a dear old friend of mine. He was telling me that the App Store did $1 trillion in business in 2022 alone. And so this sheer scale of this thing is really enormous. And so I don't think you can expect the answer to that question for it to always be revolutionary, right? You're going to be evolutionary on a lot of things when you're operating at that scale, whether you're Meta, Apple, Google, anyone, right?
That's fair.
Now, could there be more flashy stuff throughout the rest of the year, or could this one be focused on new stuff? I don't know. I did walk out of the event thinking this place is unbelievable. The actual Steve Jobs Theater and Apple Park is a wonder of the world. And the operational sophistication of what they do and how well coordinated it is. As somebody who spends all of my time, and I know all of us do, building businesses, building companies, you do have to kind of appreciate how extraordinary this thing is now at the scale that it's operating, and how efficient it is, and how high quality like every detail is. And so I don't know. I just think it's a different thing now, right?
I just love this episode should be Sam and Dave profess their love for their CEOs.
Totally.
I appreciate all these guys. I appreciate all these guys.
Sure.
I wasn't at the Zuck thing, so
I'm just telling, that's the tone of this. So Dave, what was announced?
like I said, they announced new iPhones, new iPhone Pro, new Apple Watch, not new colors of the Apple Watch Ultra. They announced new AirPods, but not new AirPods Pro. One of the things I was confused about was that they announced a really cool feature in that the AirPods Pro can now be used as a medical grade hearing aid.
Which they always could be.
That's not clear, actually. Well, I guess they always could be.
They had the magnify the environment button.
It's true, but it's a far more sophisticated algorithm that they're rolling out, Sam. I mean, technically, you're right. Like, it is a software update that is coming on to the current AirPods Pro generation, which I was actually not clear on leaving the event. But it is, nonetheless going to be a big deal, I think, for people who are having to pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for hearing aids. It was one of those things where I was just nodding my head, like, this is definitely something Apple should do. Like, it will just impact a lot of people's lives for the better in terms of health. They did also announce a sleep apnea feature for the Apple Watch, which I don't believe that people wear watches when they sleep. I think that...
I do.
Really?
You do? When do you charge it?
He does.
Well, I have a Garmin watch, so it doesn't need to be charged very frequently because it's an actual good watch.
Well, maybe some people do. I can't sleep with a watch, so, this is not a feature that would be useful for me, but I did think that was cool that they're, making sleep apnea and its effects on people. They're raising awareness on that and then deploying features on it.
For what it's worth, I will say that since the Vision Pro, talk about flashy Apple launches, since the Vision Pro was such a failure, ultimately, I actually think Apple would crush it making a sleep apnea machine. Like a super high design, because everyone's using that shit
machine?
now.
Yeah.
A CPAP.
Sure.
What's the real size of that market?
Huge and growing. Everyone uses these things now, and they're ridiculous.
I'm going to market size this right now. Hold on.
I actually think if Apple had any balls, they would release a sleep apnea device. What is it called? A CPAP with AI on board.
Well, you need the AI. I mean, the common thing here to unite these conversations are, obviously Mark talked a lot about, and both of the podcast hosts had their Meta Ray-Bans and all of that. I mean, there is this wearables AI connected march. And I think they're taking very different tacks, but they probably will converge. I mean,
Guys, 8 million CPAP interfaces annually. That's a lot.
Okay, it's a $4.75 billion market. That's nothing to Apple.
No. There's an estimated 80 million people with undiagnosed sleep apnea.
You know what I was most
you.
pissed off about at the Apple event? This follows the same thread. How many years has it been, if ever, that Apple has launched any improvements to screen time controls and the parental controls panel? It's all I want in life from Apple. And they keep not giving it to me. And I'm really pissed off about
You'll
it.
then maybe appreciate this protest that was going on out
There's
front
a protest? Was it for parents being like, more screen time controls? Because I would be in it.
Back to rotating our perspective to the context around the event. There was I don't know what you call these things here. I'll put it up on the screen. A blow up protest thing of Craig Federighi, the VP of software, basically asking this question, why aren't they protecting kids?
You know what? This is the beginning of something beautiful. We need to hire a lot of professional protesters to blow this up. Because this is the future. It is Apple's fault. They are the ones that actually have identity. They are the ones that actually could do parental controls properly. Yeah. They're the ones, and they've done a really good job of deflecting that, right, to other people. But I love this. This is a very good idea. This is the direction. So basically, the idea anti-Apple is we need a lot of professional protesters get in the mix to refocus attention on Apple as the people who actually could solve child safety, given that they actually have the identity graph and payments and control the devices. Like, it's clearly their problem to fix. And what Apple should do is get into the CPAP market, where listen to the companies that currently dominate it: Philips, Respironics, ResMed, Curative Medical, Fisher Pyle Healthcare Limited. Apple would crush these people with a high design CPAP machine.
Here's the deal. First, you have to know you have sleep apnea.
But Apple can tell you that.
That's literally what they're doing.
There's like a sleep apnea epidemic. Like, everyone has sleep apnea.
Everyone has it. It's like everyone has Ozempic.
Everyone has Ozempic.
Everyone has Ozempic, and everyone has sleep apnea. And I think
apnea is a serious problem, And so I think this is great that they're putting a medical grade diagnostic onto the watch. Like, that's like really great.
They need to vertically connect it right through to then sell you the device to fix the apnea. Like, why would you just tell someone you have sleep apnea? You're just helping fill up Respironics.
No, but then you buy the mouth tape. I don't know. So,
mouth tape. Yeah.
Why do you think? And Dave, I think you've talked about this in the past. Why is Apple not doing more to fix this problem?
I don't know.
This is what I know. I've thought about it. It came to me in yoga class yesterday, because this is what I think about during yoga class. I was like, oh, wait, out of the billion people using an iPhone, what percentage are actually parents with kids between the ages of like 7 to 15? And it's probably very small. And what percent of them are actually upset about this, like more than neutral? And so I just think it's a small enough market size that they don't care, and they'd rather make a better camera button on the iPhone that impacts the billion people.
No, it's a political thing for them. It's not about...
No, I don't believe that, Sam. Like, I don't know, maybe.
I think it's just deprioritized. They're like focusing on the splashy stuff that reaches a billion people, not the 50 million people in the market.
Do you think it's 50 million? It's got to be bigger than that.
I don't know. Oh, bigger than that? No.
Do you think more people want to use parental controls or have the sleep apnea machine?
This is a good Google interview question.
It's probably the same. The sleep-deprived parents, it's probably the same.
Yeah.
There's probably a cross opportunity here.
Guys, a CPAP costs a lot of money.
Sam, you have never seen one of the, you just...
I have seen one.
Them. I know you've seen them, but you don't use one. I don't use one. None of this is
Who better to design it than an outsider who can think from first principles?
Oh, you've got to think from first principles. Yeah. Well, you should write Tim Cook an email. I think he'd like that.
Yeah.
What's nice is that apparently it goes on your face, and they already have the Vision Pros. So you could repurpose Vision Pro team to sleep apnea team, and there's already face stuff.
This is making me think I'd love to look into Apple's health stuff more. I mean, I know they've done so much.
We should try to get Symbol on the podcast. She's
I would love
great.
to I think that sounds really interesting. And our friend Aditya has started a company.
Yeah, I started using Aditya's app. It's cool.
Yeah. Do you want to talk briefly about it, Dave? We'll give him a nice plug.
It's an app you can download on your phone.
We have to remember its name.
Bevel.
Bevel.
Hey, what do you play Snakey with it?
Yeah. It's a great new take on health-related app that brings together all of the health data on your phone, strain, recovery, sleep, the key things that everybody does need to track in order to actually improve their health. And, I've been using it. It's great. It's got some journaling features. It tells you about your stress and energy each day, monitors your health, your activities, kind of just helps you organize that data and view it in a better interface that helps you make decisions as to what to do each day.
The interface I want is Aditya, just dancing on the screen and giving me high fives or talking to me you didn't sleep well. I'd pay for dancing Aditya.
I'd pay for Ruchi yelling at me. Yeah.
Ruchi, she'd be like, it's too hot. You're too hot. Your bed is too hot.
She yells at me all the time anyway. So she'd yell at me to get off my butt. But no,
totally.
we should, I'm sure this is really what he wanted, us to poorly pitch his new company. But the idea is that...
Well, he should come on and pitch it himself.
No, I mean, it's great. It's not that poor of a pitch. I mean, I think he's it's very hard to get all of this data into one interface that helps you make better decisions. Surprisingly, it's 2024 and that's still the case, right?
Right. Right now, a lot of the data is all locked in the devices, and there are more and more of them, but they're trying to get it in one place.
It's locked in devices. It's locked in other clouds. It's in Strava. It's in Aura. It's in all these different places. And getting it all in one place is still hard. So, more power to them.
Guys, hot update. GPT estimates that 15% of iPhone users are parents with children between the ages of 7 and 15.
That's not trivial.
And they did a lot of math to get there, and I appreciate
That's 150 million people.
What does Gemini think? What does Llama think?
That's true. I don't even trust Gemini at all anymore. I'll ask Anthropic. Claude, my friend Claude will know.
Our friend Claude. Okay. Well,
Speaking of, wait, tell us about the AI Summit, Jess. Wait.
God, the AI
You had a big
Summit.
event last week.
I did. Guys, I'm so tired. Are we all tired? I'm not trying to I think
we were in Michigan at another venture event.
Okay, well, I'm hearing about that. Quick plug. Thank you to everyone who came to the Information AI Summit in San Francisco. It was awesome. I should thank our amazing partners as well, AWS, IBM, BCG, and Mubadala. It was awesome. And it was just some really cool conversations about AI. And like most information things, we kind of got in the weeds. So one of my favorite panels was one about the AI semiconductor economy and all these startups and the opportunities and the challenges. So this was one, guys, I was not on stage. I know that's hard to believe, but I got to be a listener and heard all our great reporters and editors do the interviews. And
that means you're doing a good job as a leader.
I learned a lot. I also learned I need to hit more forehands. So let me explain. IBM had a ping pong table. We had, I like your US Open hat, Dave, who's wearing it for those not on the YouTube. And you could play ping pong and then they would analyze your game. And it was actually pretty cool. And Watson X told me what I knew, but needed to hear more. And maybe that's actually a good example of AI coaching. So it was really fun. What was going on in Michigan?
Well, I think we share an LP in the University of Michigan with Slow Ventures, Offline Ventures. And the big thing is Michigan was playing my alma mater, Texas, in a really big football game, because Michigan won the national championship last year.
Season.
Texas is ranked 3rd this year. And so they invited a bunch of people to come out, host a venture summit the day before the game. And 4 of us speakers were alumni from Texas. Everyone else was Michigan. But it was interesting.
Did you wait a minute. Yeah. You're telling me that Michigan pays for your dinner and your lunch, and you went to their football game and wore the opposing team's jerseys?
No, I wore my team's jersey.
No, she absolutely did not wear the opposing team's jersey.
I sat in the president's box of the university as the only person wearing orange.
Well, that's my point. You wore the bad team. Wow.
The bad team.
Balls.
We won.
And Sam and the Longhorns won. Yeah.
It wasn't even a hard game.
And what did they do? Immediately cut their commitment in half? What? That was,
At the end of it,
it's the most expensive T-shirt I've ever seen.
I was like, are we still partners?
Michigan Stadium is shocking. It's 120,000 people. It's unbelievable. It's one of the coolest crowd experiences I've ever seen.
I'd like to go one day.
So at the Venture Summit, though, they had one GP panel about what's happening in venture capital. Then right after that, all the LPs came on and gave their take. And then they had Bill Gurley do a one-on-one about what have the last 3 decades been in venture capital. So it was very short, but a really interesting kind of 360 on what's going on in this industry. And the hot take is, this is the most difficult time of all time to be in this category as an LP, GP, or founder.
Here's a question. Why does everyone respect Bill Gurley so much?
I knew that. I just knew you were going to ask that question. I was going to ask, how many events does he do a week? Which was sort of the facetious response, but you just went right for it.
He's not, I have shook his hand. He's very tall. I know. I mean, we're not friends. We're not enemies. There are enemies I have in the world. There's obviously a lot of Bill Gurley's awesome in the world, but when I look at his record of companies, he doesn't have massive winners. So what is it about him that makes people like him?
Uber was the most famous one, but also in a negative way.
Well, he also didn't lead it. That he might have been involved.
So here's the story of how Bill Gurley became.
I thought he did lead it.
No,
I don't know
he didn't.
him. So
he's on the board.
Jess,
he was on the board.
Tell us.
He was on the board, but didn't Kohler do that deal?
No, Kohler came Kohler was.
So that was it. Is Uber the answer?
Yeah, Uber's the answer.
Okay.
Would you like to hear the story of how Bill Gurley became Bill Gurley?
I do.
Yeah.
Very shortly. Also, I don't know if I appropriately said BCV for Bain Capital Ventures, who was one of our AI Summit sponsors, because I think I referred to them by their old name, but now they're BCV. So I'd like everyone to know
Got it.
And they're fabulous. Okay. So, Bill was an analyst turned VC and had a blog, if you guys remember that, called Above Crowds or Clouds, or I'm getting Crowds, right?
And just to modify that slightly, Bill told the story of starting that. And actually, it started when he was a sell-side analyst. And he started to send his analysis both internally and externally. He was one of the only people sending it to an email list. And I thought, this is a man after Sam Lesson's heart.
Oh, I like that.
He's like OG Sam Lesson. No, he is.
And he's like a spam lesson before spam lesson. Amazing.
Yeah, he is.
I hadn't heard that story. And he was like, that's how I built my reputation, was I started to send my analysis external to the firm, and nobody else was doing that.
No, but tell him what he did. Was it the Palm Pilot? He went to some event. Here's the hack. Yeah. Ready, Sam? Sam, write this down. He went to a live event. And as swag from the event, this is in the 90s, they gave out Palm Pilots.
Palm Pilot, yeah.
And they preloaded everyone in the event's contact info. So you had everyone's contacts that was at the event. And there were 600 people. So he just did a send all.
He took all the contacts.
He's Spam Lesson.
Yeah, he's OG Spam Lesson.
Guys, I'm going to say something here that was going to get me in trouble. I don't know if Bill Gurley would come on the pod because I've had a really big tiff with him. And
maybe.
We're UT alum. He likes me.
It was over a total misunderstanding. We had a phone number we were calling. I've had this conversation with him, so I'm willing to reveal it here.
Cool.
We were trying to figure out what was happening at Uber, and as reporters do, they call people's phones. We thought we had Bill Gurley's cell phone. It turned out we had his gatehouse phone. So upon calling it, our reporters in our newsroom were just calling it, and he thought we were hiding in the bushes and threatening the safety of his wife. And I was getting these angry missives about all the ways we're crossing the line by threatening his wife's safety while I'm looking at my reporter from across my desk in my newsroom, totally perplexed. And somehow his gatehouse phone ended up somewhere. We thought it was his cell phone. So we apologized. But we didn't do anything wrong, but he was very upset. So Bill, maybe we can bury the gatehouse hatchet.
Bury the hatchet, Bill.
I don't know how anyone who built his career spamming Palm Pilot lists. I mean, you know how many gatehouses he emailed in that list? There's no way he hasn't emailed a gatehouse.
I mean, probably emailed a toilet. Everything has an email address.
As a professional spammer myself, every time I hit send on my email newsletter, I immediately get back 15 Zendesk tickets I've filed at various companies around the world from an unclean email address. So I promise you,
So good.
Okay, so fine. So Uber, what else though? Nordstrom.com?
Stitch. He did a bunch of things.
This didn't really work.
I'm just saying, he's taken a lot of companies public.
Don't we have some real topics to cover?
No, we're almost forgot. We got to get to the creator economy briefly. But before the creator economy, there was the on-demand economy. And at the time, there was a lot of hype, and Bill was a booster of this economy in some ways. But he had one blog post in particular, and I won't remember it, but it was basically about TAM and market sizing and why people get it wrong. And
it was
he's legitimately a great, he's just a wonderful communicator. And
great writer.
What I'm hearing from this is that if I ever want to be, in 20 years like a Bill Gurley, I've already done Solana, which was basically as big as Uber. So all I now have to do is write a bunch of blog posts and I'm good. Because that's fine with me.
Sure. And you too can be moderating and doing firesides at football games.
The problem is I'm not so tall. He's very large.
You also don't have that great Texas draw. You have a lot, but you have other things going for you.
I can work on my Texas drawl.
No, I think you should keep your East Coast drawl, Sam.
Yeah, you got to stay in your lane, Sam.
All right.
Sam, you did kind of I don't know, break the internet this week, but reporters have been calling you nonstop about a post you made this week. And since we have the opportunity to put you in the hot seat and you have to talk to us, can you tell us why you think MrBeast is the next BuzzFeed and why this has stirred such a reaction?
Well, okay. So first of all, I've had a good week on Twitter, just for what it's worth. But just in terms of breaking the internet, my Google search is broken because I couldn't find the debate. I'm like shocked at how viral this has gone, as well as a few other things. But like, look, on the Beast thing,
just went in there and is like, this Sam guy is helping us hit our quarter. Like, and he's just dialing it up for you.
For what it's worth, I think there might be some, I am sure that I've been shadow banned at certain instances, as everyone thinks they have been. But I think I might be unshadow banned. Anyway, on the Beast thing, like, here's the deal. I want to be clear by starting out by saying what Jimmy has done, right, for the creator economy is very real. Like, I'm not like anti MrBeast. I think he has kind of shown a lot of creators, one, how big can be, and that it is a serious thing they can get. It's like, it's a real thing, right? So I like believe in that from the creator. And two, I think he has an entrepreneurial spirit, and like I'm really into, as I know a lot of people are, especially on this podcast, like entrepreneurs as creators, and like thinking about like, it's not every creator. In fact, most creators are not entrepreneurs, but there are some that truly are and are building really fabulous community first, companies where they start building a cult and a community and then layer process. It's a fascinating thing. Slow. We've already invested tens of millions of dollars into this strategy. We'll be investing, 50 million more in the next few years just into creators. We're like very into this theme. Feed creators. But the thing I wanted to point out, and the thing that I've been getting a lot of calls on, is if you track the history of BuzzFeed and then you think about the history of MrBeast so far, they track very closely, right? And what do I mean by that? It's like the history of BuzzFeed started out, Jonah was like, oh, I can hack algorithms for distribution and make better professional content and get it across social media and feeds, which he could do, and he did do. MrBeast started out, oh, I can hack thumbnails and distributions, and if I light money on fire, people really want to watch that. Very strategic about how they did that. Two, they built a huge generic audience, right? So BuzzFeed's whole thing was big audience, like how to reach the maximum number of people, especially young people. What has Beast done? Same thing. It's like all about not like narrow focus, not tight community, it's really just about maximum audience size. And he's done an amazing job of it, but it's a very generic audience, right? And then step 3 was, okay, how do you like build businesses, monetize around this, right? Again, they're both going towards generic products because that's what you can sell to a generic audience. So you look at that, you look at like, that kind of pattern matches. Then you look at the capital raising. It's kind of the same story, right? Like BuzzFeed, people said, ooh, social good, and BuzzFeed is the future of the media. And they started plowing money, right, into BuzzFeed on the way up, right, all the way through going public. Beast is kind of going through the same cycle right now where people are plowing money and they're like, we believe in creator economy and Beast is the future of all creator. And so they're just plowing the same types of valuations into this. The thing I was positing is I expect we'll end up with the same outcome, right? Which is you're going to see a huge run up, a lot of excitement. But unfortunately, the Beast audience is in highly competitive, straight up media, right? Like it's straight up, entertainment. It's super competitive zone. Very susceptible to algorithm changes. There's a lot of people coming up against it. And again, I really worry that the audience is just very, very broad and very generic and very low LTV. So it's ultimately going to prove very difficult to monetize. So I don't know. We've watched BuzzFeed really fall apart, from a value and business perspective. It's basically gone. It's worth a fraction of the money invested. And, it also is a nice catchy headline of, is MrBeast BuzzFeed 2.0? So that's kind of the thing I've been thinking about.
I guess my response to this is the difference is that MrBeast is a brand that exceeds BuzzFeed's brand in terms of the ability to monetize it, right? BuzzFeed was trying to monetize using advertising straight up. They were incredibly susceptible to, frankly, changes in Meta's algorithms, or back then it was Facebook. Facebook just like changed the algorithm overnight in 2017 and effectively destroyed the entire media business because their advertising models collapsed overnight. Like they could no longer fulfill the insertion orders. To be clear, like Facebook courted these companies to build on their distribution and then ripped it from under them, right? And really did destroy a lot of businesses. I had to spend a lot of time with a lot of founders in that time period going through that. And so Sam's right, like being dependent on that is not great. Now, the difference between BuzzFeed and any of those media businesses and MrBeast is that MrBeast has really direct relationship with his customer in a way that I think is very different.
How?
I mean, kids in particular listen to MrBeast and they do want to buy the products.
But just to push you, just to push you.
But push me on what? Like they've got a multi-100 million person audience. Like he's driving the purchase of products in the real world.
Well, okay, but just to push you, Dave, like a few things. One is I was at a creator summit this weekend, which was actually really inspiring. The Nas summit with Nuseir.
Yeah, Nas is awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. So I spoke at that. And like one of the big things, I was at one of their sessions where they were talking about optimizing videos. One of their big things is just like subscriber counts are meaningless. It's like the least important number, right? In YouTube, subscribers mean nothing, right? In the YouTube universe anymore. So like the fact that he has a lot of subscribers, I don't think really means anything. Like he's still highly mediated by the algorithm.
Engagement does, right? The ability to reach someone and move them to action.
That's completely moderated by the algorithm and completely moderated by YouTube, right? It's not like there's any permanent base he has there. Now,
which I think is why you see something like Dude Perfect creating their own distribution pattern, right?
Which it might be a thing you try, right? But I'm just saying, like, the current state of that, again, like, what did BuzzFeed do? They tried to do native advertising, integrations. They tried to do media sales. They tried to do product sales. Like, it's all the same playbook all over again. And I just think it's like, I don't know, like, the parallels seem pretty similar to me, right? I don't think it's that different.
I would like to give a hot take here, which is, oh God, I've said that too much this episode. I'm going to stop that. I think that what's really happening is that these brands, BuzzFeed and MrBeast, are very horizontal. They're trying to be mass.
Yes.
They're trying to be generalists. In many, many years that I spent running Brit & Co., we did a lot of our partnerships with Target and Walmart and all these like mass retail brands where people have to pay less, but you're getting more of them. I would wager that business model in today's world, 2024, is very, very difficult. We've like swung the pendulum into verticalization, like deeper niches. And now you can do all these hyper targeting and things around those niches. You can build much more businesses when you're more verticalized. And so I think like Mark Rober is a great example of a more vertically integrated creator. And Crunch Labs is his business offshoot. That's like physics and STEM stuff in a box.
Yeah.
And he still has a big YouTube channel and he has live events and all of those things. Whereas candy bars and MrBeast are just so generic and broad that it's hard to keep the attention of the everyday consumer when like an 8-second attention span is all we have on social media. And furthermore, I think we talked about this recently, like what brands actually have staying power in today's world when we're so fragmented? Like name a brand that was created after 2014, 2015, that's like still super resonant. It's really hard to find a lot of them, especially that aren't creators. And so I think that these vertical, even if you're a Mark Rober, like I don't know how long Crunch Labs will be relevant. I think you have to continue to reinvent yourself every few years in today's world.
For what it's worth, I mean, obviously you and I like deeply agree about this, right? Like the trust is incredibly meaningful. Like the cults, the vertical is like incredibly meaningful and useful if you can get that real audience, that authenticity. But the scale just seems like really indefensible, right? Like, when you have like a ton of people and with low LTVs that are very fickle, right? And mediated in all these types of ways.
And a small thing to add too, I mean, and I was very up close to the rise and fall of BuzzFeed, and BuzzFeed was in the wrong business model. They didn't understand. They also didn't understand what kind of business they were. They raised money based on the idea that they could be a technology company. I mean, Andreessen Horowitz plowed a shit ton of money into BuzzFeed. And so we see this again and again. And this brings me to the last thing I wanted to mention, that companies sort of not fully understanding, embracing, and picking the right business model, often because they need different narratives and stories to raise capital, or they think they do. You guys have pointed out that there's a different way. And so I'm not as close to the dynamics around MrBeast Inc., but, the question is sort of like, is there that, like, you can say and often do that so many business models are possible when you have that direct relationship. And I think you're right, Dave, that relationship opens up many more business model doors than not having it. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you can win in all those different businesses. So
if you're
Sure.
MrBeast right now, here's a question. If you're MrBeast, what do you do right now? Like you realize maybe you're too broad.
What's the South Park thing? You like start up, cash in, bro down. Remember
you think
that?
you just sell out and you're done?
What does that even mean?
You didn't even watch that? It's a great episode.
Sam, between South Park and Friday Night Lights, Sam's really got the mottos down.
If I'm MrBeast, I'm like building a machine that can build new products on a regular cadence and just like, continue to
Or do you build
ship
like
them.
sub-creators that are more vertically integrated?
And for what it's worth, I think he's trying to do both, right? But my actual answer would be a little bit different, which is not going to be a popular answer you would never actually do, which is I think that's the mistake. right? I think that's like that's basically building a bunch of infrastructure when like you're fundamentally mispositioned. You're putting like good equity after bad. I would actually do the opposite, which I'd be like, look, I'm one of the most famous people in the world. I've done a great job doing that, right? I should work on the authenticity I should stick to my knitting in the videos I do. I should build authenticity with like my generational set. Like I'm not going to capture the next generation of kids. They've already moved on. But kind of like Kim Kardashian, like I have my lane and it's great. But like, don't even try to like platformize or whatever. Just own it. Be like, I'm going to be a 3-person shop and make $300 million a year for the foreseeable future. It's almost, you know what I call that? It's almost the Paris Hilton strategy, right?
Yeah, but Sam, I guess like I'm not understanding your point then. Like, I guess I thought you started out saying there is no business for Jimmy here, but now you're saying that there is.
I want to be clear. I think that there is, you can for sure be a celebrity and do financially great as an individual. Like there's nothing, this goes into the whole like don't build a venture-backed startup when you can have like a great business you just own and operate. I think that's perfectly fine. I think the second you try to be BuzzFeed though, to Jess's point, be like, we are the future, right? We are the future of a media company. That's where you start effectively wasting a ton of effort and a ton of money and raise a bunch of money at ridiculous numbers that you're just going to end up lighting on fire.
But I guess I just don't see them doing that. Like they're doing chocolate. They're basically doing the Kardashian Paris Hilton strategy, right? Which is to pick the highest margin possible product that you can sell and sell it and make a lot of money.
I think Paris Hilton's strategy, first of all, is licensing, which is like a 5% royalty.
You guys are reminding me that we have Paris Hilton, the woman who runs her business, Rachel Weber, coming to WTF. So I'm just taking notes because I'm going to
Rachel Weber's running her business now?
Paris Hilton is the queen of licensing. She's like done everything from perfumes to pajamas. I don't even know. But I don't know that is he doing like actual manufacturing of the chocolate?
Well, give it a few months. We'll see. We'll revisit this in a few months about what's going on. But what I'd say is that I think that I'm Paris Hilton. I make $50 million a year being Paris Hilton because I'm really resonant in a broad way to like a segment.
And I can license.
And I can license, and like I'm really big in in
like
Southeast
that's a big
Asia.
business is the only point that I'm trying to make.
But that's a great personal brand. That's not a great business platform. I think there's a big difference, right? Like, and I think that's like kind of, I guess, the distinction I would draw is like running that lean for cash and being really rich.
Kim Kardashian, Paris Hilton, Selena Gomez, like these are 10 years old, 20 years old. They're still big.
Well, here's the thing. And again, this is good. We can get into details. So first of all, in terms of what's going on in the creator economy, I would actually wager, and what I've been hearing from people is that the head is really falling off already, right? So not the Paris Hilton era so much, but like the Kim Kardashian is huge era is already over, right? She's had a few wins. It's been great, but it's not durable. People aren't going to pay what they used to pay for the placements. Everything is going towards the niche and towards tails right now in terms of what's
driving that. CPCs?
It's just conversion, cost of the media, and like the reality is the big generic guys just don't convert that well per dollar, right? So everything's going to the tail and to like more niche and more tight communities with higher spend and higher specifics.
It makes logical sense, right?
It does. So like basically, I think I would wager to say that we're not going to see another Kim Kardashian style character, right? Like that era is kind of come and gone already. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't milk it forever. Yahoo still makes a lot of money, right? Like there's a long tail to these things. So I think that they'll be fine. Like they're going to make a lot of money. But I think the mistake is if you're Yahoo is not recognizing when you're Yahoo and being Yahoo and running for cash and trying to, like basically build infrastructure and raise more money and like be something out of your lane in a generic space where I think you're just out of the lane, right? Like I think it's
reasonable.
Now, I do think I'm very bullish on the vertical creators getting way bigger, right? Like if you truly are like the voice of a community and the most trusted node in a place where product development's getting cheaper and code is getting cheaper and supply chain is getting more efficient, I think it's never been a better time to know like the aviation vertical better than anyone. Like if you have a Cessna, you trust me. I'm the Cessna guy and I'm going to sell you shitloads of products, right?
Let me ask a hard question here. How do you, as that creator, not get disintermediated by the big platforms? Like, as you scale up.
Bill Gurley already told us, Palm Pilot's an email, man.
Yeah, but even email doesn't deliver.
No, I think the reality is there's a difference. There's a substantive difference between entertainment, which is highly competitive, and you're going to eat whatever Apple puts in the feature box on top of your page versus something you actively go out and seek regardless where it is. And the reality is Cessna guy,
That's an interesting nuance.
You have a Facebook group, fine, you're going to show up with Facebook because you want to talk to that guy. It turns into email newsletter, great. It doesn't matter. Like the platform, you still have to go through a platform, but it is important enough to you in your specific niche and your spend and your trust that you'll seek that character out completely regardless of what platform it's on. That is a very different thing than entertainment, which is so driven by what's marketed to you right at the top of whatever box. And I just think we've all learned the lesson, which is subscriber counts aren't worth dog shit, right? In 2023, 24. It is all about...
You're talking about subscriber counts on social media platforms.
Correct.
Followers versus engagement.
In the news business, I don't want that clip taken out of context. Speaking of context, Sam, I'm getting emails about your next meeting, just so you know. So I'm getting emails that
I have a meeting.
Your next meeting. You have a meeting.
Oh, another Pool House guest?
Can I talk about one related story?
You guys, I'll go do this meeting. Bye, friends.
That's how much Sam cares about this topic.
Ooh, now we can dunk on him all we want.
This is the best. I love when Sam leaves. No.
Yeah.
So we had a big story in the information this week about Stripe, and specifically how Stripe's role within the creator economy and in facilitating payments for third-party merchants is giving the banks jitters. And so what our reporter Michael Rodden reported for the first time is that Wells Fargo has stopped working with Stripe in this capacity to help process payments. Goldman Sachs looked at whether it could step in, but decided to not enter this part of the payments business because of the risk and compliance amid all this heightened regulatory scrutiny. And, it's been a really big and interesting story, in part because I think it touches on many of these themes. I mean, from the creator economy side, it's showing how still a little bit fragile key pieces of the ecosystem are because of these bigger questions. And from the bank side, for years now, we've been writing a lot about the banks that have, amid greater scrutiny, sort of fled crypto and left some of those companies stranded. And the fact that a company as established and big and well-funded and as successful as Stripe is also grappling with how to get the support from the broader financial ecosystem at this moment is just fascinating to me. So
there's an entire pod or something here around the playbook, because I think that though Sam is right that the niche creator, working hard to be the voice of their community and building from the ground up is the way to this low CAC, high LTV, amazing business lane. It's not trivial to maintain the connection with your audience across all of these types of tools, whether it's, like you're saying, Stripe not being able to scale in this part of the stack, or, losing access to your audience on one of the big social media platforms, or et cetera, et cetera. It's not actually this straight line, even if you're doing this niche thing. You might lose part of your audience to one algorithm change. And a lot of people, I think, don't realize what the playbook is and how to think about this. So it might be worth talking about another time.
Yeah, and time will tell. Again, this reminded me of BuzzFeed, where I was talking about, BuzzFeed thought it was a tech business, turned out it wasn't. WeWork had a pitch that it was a tech business, turned out it wasn't, right? I mean, fintech is kind of caught in a similar dynamic, right? All these big fintech companies are using technology in incredible ways to reimagine parts of the experience. But at the end of the day, they pass through some of the same pipes as the traditional finance system, which is highly regulated. And that tension isn't new, and the companies that have innovated have worked through it. And I suspect they'll continue to in some ways, but it's just so interesting, right? Out here in Silicon Valley, some of these companies are talked about in very breathless ways, and when's their IPO and all of that. And then I think what I was proud of the team in this case, but I think is important, is to kind of really scrutinize where the rubber's meeting the road and some of those key things required, and how, now to be fair, other banks have stepped in, and obviously there are a number of banks that are working with Stripe. And what's happening is that banks are very particular in what kinds of transactions they'll get involved in and which ones they won't. And so that just appears to be creating a new headache and a level of complexity that a company can obviously deal with. But I thought it was fascinating, and business, man,
it's a good story.
It's not easy. Britt, you want to send us off with what's happening?
I'm going to send you off with two things. Number one, my friend Claude tells me that it's actually 7% of iPhone users are parents. And I trust Claude more than I trust GPT.
Oh, God.
I trust Claude. Secondly, we all saw it. Taylor endorsed Kamala. People are eating pets, apparently, and we're, 55 days out from the election. So
how about Sinner's run at the U.S. Open? It's pretty amazing.
Sinner's run in the U.S. Open. The VMAs are happening this week. There's a lot going on in pop culture.
There's some
right
Emmys
now.
action, right? I don't know. I mean, tennis was so
Emmys
good.
nomination.
It was so good.
Trump media shares sunk to a new low after the debate, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it was fun. We can make fun of Sam. So Sam was talking about how challenging a live podcast is as a format. He spent up until Mark's conversation watching the debate on his phone throughout the whole thing. So at least you can multitask with the second screen, even in an arena.
Mm-hmm.
But well, we covered a lot, my friends, I'm the only one here. Thanks for another great episode. To all our listeners and viewers, thank you guys for spreading the word, for tuning in, for the feedback, for the jabs, the jokes. We love it all. And we'll see you back here next week for another episode of More or Less. Bye.
Bye, guys.
See you later.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.